Hello and welcome into class number 2 in how to read a birth chart. This class is going to focus all on the planets, the signs, and the houses. This video is going to be a little bit on the longer side because I'm going through all the planets, or at least our first person planets, our planets that are the fast movers. So the sun, the moon, Mars, Mercury, and Venus, going through all 12 signs and houses. It's going to take just a little bit of time to be as thorough as I like to be. So get comfortable, and thank you for joining me for class number 2. Here we go. Alrighty, guys. Sorry that it took so long to get class number 2 out. If you might hear it in my voice, our whole family had a little cold. I've got me some rose petal and chamomile tea here. I'm going to be sipping on that. And you're just gonna have to deal with my nasally voice. So let's jump in because there is so much to cover. So let's get started with the planets. They are showing, when I think of planets, I want to think about like a movie. In the movie, you have the setting of the movie, you've got the plot of the movie, and then you have the characters or the actors in the movie. And that's what the planets are. They're representing what? They're representing what is happening in your life, and that what could be in the form of a place, an internal event, an external event. It can be absolutely anything. Planets can manifest as what in any way, shape, or form. So I want to get started, and like I said in the last class, I want us to focus on, because we could go down rabbit holes and we could learn about absolutely everything, but in order to read your birth chart right now today and figure out your innermost workings, you need to focus on those fast movers, your sun and your moon, we're going to start with. So let's start with the sun. We know that the sun is our 5th house. Okay, the sun is where the 5th house is. In your birth chart circle, your 5th house might not be Leo or have the sun in it, but in the regular ring that we discussed last week when we dissected the birth chart, the 5th house piece of pie, it just belongs to the sun and it belongs to Leo. Okay, so that's what the sun represents. It represents those Leo qualities. It represents the 5th house qualities of love, creativity, and children, expression, and amusement. The sun does have its own tarot card. I love to use tarot cards as significantors. I can speak words. If you pull a card out and set it and use it as like a message from the sun, or, you know, what do I need to do to quell my ego? And any of these questions, you could use the Sun Tarot card as your signifier. See, there's a word. All right. Anyway, let's get back to what the sun represents. It's talking about your ego, okay? This is your identity of who you kind of hear speaking to you in your head, all right? This is the concept you have of yourself. It's how you experience life and how you express what you are experiencing. So a lot of times this can represent the father or the authority figure. Now, I am not going to be one who would say always the father. You could have a very dominant masculine mother, and that's who that could represent for you. So this is the authority figure, but most oftentimes looked at as the father. This is also our solar plexus chakra. This is your willpower, okay, and your vitality in life. The house position, when we go back to that circle and we look at the piece of pie that has your sun in it, that house position is going to show you the setting in which you kind of view the world. Okay, almost like if you're putting on a pair of rose-colored glasses, that's kind of like the house, what the house is going to tell you about where your sun is. Sometimes people do confuse the sun sign with the ascendant sign, and these are two totally different things. Okay, So also, just so we are clear, any aspect to the sun, so any of the lines, any of those aspect lines inside a birth chart that are touching your sun are extremely important, because those are influencing and coloring the way you manifest that energy. All right. So the sun as a state of being, all right, this is pride, when we feel pride, when we feel self-esteem, when we feel playfulness and willfulness, all right? And then the sun as a process, this would be to create and to express, to intend, to choose, to play, to impress, to seek approval, and to defend. So all of these words, when you're looking at your own chart, these are words you can use to try to make your own sentence. Okay, these are the words I want you to come back to and try to look at and say, you know, when you express, when you create, when you play, you know, how do you do these things? And then look at what house it's in and use some of the key words from the house section when we get there. Let's move on over to moon. The moon is sacred to witches. It goes around the sun once every month. It goes all the way around. So there's 28 moon mansions, and that's where the sun is, basically takes 28 days to go all the way around. All right. It's ruled by Cancer and the fourth house of the past, your home, your family, and your roots. Also, the moon does have its own tarot card. Hello, we have a visitor. We have a visitor. The moon does have its own tarot card. So again, it's a wonderful signifier. If you want to get out your tarot deck, put that moon card at the top and ask some questions, you know, ask some questions to your moon and see what messages. Pardon my sipping. I'm just going to keep sipping on my tea. Alrighty. So here we do have the mother or the nurturing figure in your life. Again, I don't want to put sex, bias basis on this. So it can be the nurturing figure. It could be your grandmother, and anybody like that. All right. So your moon is going to show you how you react based on your subconscious predispositions. All right. The house the moon is in colors your reactions and emotions with the theme of that house. The moon as a process. This is going to be your process of nurturing, protecting. This is how you listen, how you understand. This is when you reflect, when you sympathize, and you love unconditionally. Loving unconditionally, that's something that deserves a touch deeper on. And sometimes when we think that we love unconditionally, and we're pretty sure, we're like, oh yeah, I'm doing it. I love my children unconditionally. I love my spouse unconditionally. I love people. I love God. I love all these things unconditionally. But the truth of the matter is, when our spouse or our child or whomever it is doesn't respond or do things that we seem or want them to do, we often get our feelings hurt. And that is a symptom of not having unconditional love and looking for the other person to fulfill something inside of ourselves. So to truly unconditionally love something, you know, I just want to put that out there, that we give of ourselves without expecting anything in return. The moon is a state of being. This is those loving feelings, the feeling of belonging, closeness, warmth, and tenderness, vulnerability to rejection, dependency, and self-protection. So, moon as your capability. When we talk about your capabilities as we're moving forward, when we looked at the capabilities, what a capability is, it's your psychological faculty, okay? Your psychological faculties it's your mental capability to understand, to do certain things, urges. Our primal urges are these psychological faculties that are of one consciousness level or another. So we have physical faculties like driving a car, operating machinery. These are things we do with our physical capacities. When we choose things and we make choices in life, and we have needs and desires to be fulfilled, these are coming through our psychological faculties or our psychological capability to understand things. So when we look at the moon as your capability to be receptive, or to see your memories, to see your personal unconsciousness, this is to listen, your capability to listen, to respond. The capability to access your memories correctly, and, not be overwhelmed by the emotion that is involved with them, but see them for what they truly are. So this is your capability to get a hold of and work with your personal subconscious and unconscious thoughts, which is kind of the key to our shadow in a way. So the moon is absolutely crucial. Love the sun and the moon. Now, the sun and the moon, these are not planets, but these are luminaries. So these are the luminaries in your chart of the sun and the moon. Let's move on to Mercury. So we know that Mercury is a busy guy. He's busybody. I don't even want to call him a guy. He's so androgynous. Mercury is out there having a good time. So Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. All right, so that is our third house of thinking, mind, communication, left brain intellect. Also the sixth house of health, routine, organization, and service. So Mercury's pretty quick. He goes around 88 days. Every 88 days is a year on Mercury. So your patterns, when you're thinking, so you can catch your patterns when you're thinking in a lot of different ways. But let's say that once every 88 days or so, you fall into a certain pattern of thinking. Like when they say when Mercury goes retrograde and people go back to their exes or things like that. This can be an 88-day pattern where you see yourself wanting to leave again or wanting to go back again based on the way that you're thinking. And that's what Mercury is representing, is how you think. And the fact we can look at how long it takes a planet to go around the sun can represent in our mind these patterns of thinking and how often they may come around. That's why it's super important to pay attention to these fast movers like the moon, the sun, and Mercury, Venus, and Mars, because this tells us how we think, how we love, and how we do. So let's keep looking at Mercury here. So again, we've got 88 days. This is where your patterns can be seen. So taking into account the house theme can give you a really good look at the way Mercury is affecting your thinking at the present time and also at the time of birth. So this is our throat chakra. You can use the Magician Tarot card as a signifier for Mercury. I think that's a great idea. It represents, we already said this, the way that you think, the way that you reason. This is your mind, and this is how you interpret language. And language isn't just something that we speak, but symbols. Symbology is the oldest language, like runes, things like that. So understanding your Mercury can help you see how your mind truly works and, what your strengths and weaknesses are when it comes to communication. I had to make a second Mercury card because there's just so much good information on Mercury. But the capabilities, so your psychological faculties, that Mercury brings to the table it's your cognition, your intellect, the discrimination that you bring to be able to decide what is true and what is not. When one has a strong Mercury and you hear information that is true and it rings true in your very being, you know it to be true. Oftentimes with a weaker Mercury, you have a problem in discriminating what is accurate and what is not, what is real and true for you, and what has just been given to you by the mainstream media or by, your family, or indoctrined into you from other sources. Okay, so that's what Mercury brings to the table: your ability to analyze, to problem solve. All right. When we look at Mercury as a process, this is, again, to analyze, to criticize. It's to reduce things down to its parts, to correct or fix. We can problem solve, all right? A process of Mercury would be to improve things, to serve, and to discriminate. When we look at Mercury as a state of being, this is feeling useful. Okay, when you feel productive, state of deficiency, when you're not feeling so productive, your competency, negative critical mindset, worrying, analyzing, obsessing, these can all be the way that Mercury is as a state of being. Okay, I just love Mercury. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to Venus. See what I'm doing? Yeah. Hope you guys don't mind the way that I did the class. I tried to set it up on Zoom. If anyone wants to reach out to me, if you know about Zoom, I tried to do the class on Zoom and share my screen and record it, but I am a very good researcher. I looked, and I have recorded Zooms in the past. The record button was gone. When I Googled how to record on Zoom, it said very clearly how to do it, and where the button should have been, it was not. So here we are again with me trying to share my awesome graphics with you guys in the best way I can, and that's going to be just from top-down recording, just like this. So I hope you don't mind. Let's talk about Venus, the way that we love, the way that we find beauty. So this has got, just like Mercury, we've got two signs that it rules. We are talking about Taurus and Libra. So that's going to be our second house of money, self-reliance and resources, our possessions, and also our seventh house areas like justice, relationships, balance, harmony, marriage, agreements, and contracts. So Venus goes around the sun every 225 days. That's a year on Venus. So patterns can play out in less than a year when you're looking at your Venus movements. Something really beautiful. Venus, well, all of the planets make a beautiful sacred geometry shape in the sky as they make their yearly, what is a year for them. So every 225 days on Venus, it makes this beautiful movement. And right now, it was just yesterday, we were at the tip of what's called the Venus star, and it's absolutely beautiful. Right now, Venus in the sky, right this moment as we're filming, is Cazimi, the sun. That means that Venus and the sun are basically together in the sky, more than conjunct. Venus is in the heart of the sun right now, and it's an absolutely beautiful energy that if you're tuned in, you can feel the photons dancing across your skin, filled to the brim with all of the mystery of Venus. So let's get back here. Sorry, I digress. Venus represents what you find beautiful and how you show your love. Okay, so these are your relationships. It's your attraction. What attracts you. It's your aesthetic and what you find pleasing to look at. This is how you express affection. It's how you feel appreciated or give of yourself. This is your personal security and your stability. When you look at Venus as a state of being, we're looking at safety, security, comfort, pleasure, serenity. I can just hear serenity now. Equanimity, self-indulgence, laziness, lethargy, resistance, gluttony, greed. And then if you look at the state, Venus as a state of being as connected to Libra, because those first few things there, so if you look at the safety, security, comfort, pleasure, serenity, equanimity, self-indulgence, laziness, lethargy, resistance, and gluttony, those are actually our states of being as a Venus in Taurus. But if we look at the Libra in Venus, you're going to get some of those words like love, affection, intimacy, harmony, grace, charm, serenity again, serenity now, over-dependency on others for connection. Okay, so there's a difference in a little bit of the way that Taurus can express as opposed to the way Venus can express. So when you look at Venus as a process, this would be your process of acquiring things, people, whatever it is you collect or acquire, and it's not even a collection, it's just the getting of things in general. As a process, this is to have. This is when you are going out and securing things, to accumulate, soothe, to comfort, to find pleasure, to please oneself, to gratify. When we look at that process as a Libra process, it would be to beautify, to harmonize, to cooperate, to consider, to negotiate, to engage, and to socialize. So Venus is absolutely crucial to, the way that we look at things. My next little picture here, let's take a quick look at it, because again, we're not going to go into the outer planets in this. It would just be so long. The class would never, we should do another class on outer planets, but especially outer planets aspects to your inner planets. That's what we should discuss. But this is a good thing. I wanted everyone to see. We know that a year on Earth is 365 days. We just talked about Mercury being 88 days. And we talked about Venus here. So after that is Mars over here at 687 days. After that, we go to Jupiter. He goes around every 12 years. After that, we hop over to Saturn. With every 30 years, you hear about your Saturn return. It comes around about every 29 years. Uranus is going to be 84 years. Then we move to Neptune at 165 years, and Pluto. So you can see how some of these, like Neptune and Pluto, there's going to be people out there who never, ever see a transit to Neptune or Pluto hitting one of their major natal planets. For me, personally, I have Pluto transiting my ascendant right now. So that's important for me. I have Pluto sitting on a piece of that cross of matter, like we talked about in the first class. So anyway, I just wanted you guys to see and be able to jot down. These are patterns. Again, this is a pattern. A Jupiter cycle is a big thing. Every 13 years, including Jupiter's retrograde, you get a Jupiter cycle. This year, the entire year of 2022 has basically set on the huge Jupiter-Neptune conjunction at the beginning of this year that happens on a cycle. So anyway, let's move on to how we do. How we assert. Let's look at Mars. All right, guys, so Mars is the ruler of Aries. This is also the ancient ruler of Scorpio before Pluto was discovered. Okay, so Mars is going to be talking about first house themes. Okay, like self-awareness, asserting your will, your physical energy and independence, your self-confidence. We did say it would have been the ancient ruler of the 8th house. Okay, so these would have been the themes like death and sex, the hidden and occult things of life, other people's resources, things like that. So Mars is our joy and excitement. It's the impatience we feel, the irritability we feel, our anger. It's when we feel competitiveness or aggression. It's our selfishness. It's our very drive of our life, okay? It's also our courage. Something that I'd like to talk about Mars, and it says our next thing here is our root chakra, our primal urge for survival. So something I like to talk a lot about in my classes when I have them is the survival sex control loop that we all get stuck in and we all end up playing out of subconsciously. So what that is we have survival, which is our root chakra. It's our Mars, planet Mars. When we come out of our mother's wombs, we cannot survive on our own. We are dependent upon another to feed us, bathe us, change us, soothe us. And at some point in the first, 4 or 5 years of life, we learn how to get our own juice cup or, find a snack in the fridge. We learn how to wipe our own butts, hopefully before 4 or 5. But you get what I'm saying. At some point, we master, or we seem to get control over survival in a way that we aren't dependent upon another person for survival. So that's our root chakra. And if you go to that second chakra, which would be our Venus, right? Our Venus is our sacral chakra. This is sex, survival, sex control. So once we learn how to survive, once we think we've not so much mastered it, but we're surviving anyway, right? Either way, we're surviving. We move on to the sex portion, and that's when we go out there and discover our own bodies, our ways of being, how we, fit in with that is the next step in life, right? With sex. And then after we have mastered, and I say mastered with the biggest smile ever, after we have gotten into the waters of trying out our sex chakra, you move on to control, and that's our sun. That's our sun and our willpower. And so these loops and patterns that play out when we're playing out survival loops, playing out the same sex loops, playing out the same control loops, these are the loops that we get stuck in until we can identify them. And that's what these planets, and looking at their aspects, that's how this comes in handy, when we can identify our patterns and go, oh, that's that. I'm not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do that anymore. So anyway, we are looking at about every 2 years with Mars. All right. And one thing I like to say, a pattern that some people might be able to relate to, is like smoking cigarettes. Say you quit smoking cigarettes, but around almost every 2 years, you pick it up again and you smoke for a little while. That could be because Mars is transiting that natal Mars, or because Mars is transiting, something else in your chart, or even Aries in the first house. See? So these are patterns. These are patterns that we are able to identify. Any aspect to any of our personal planets is important. So let's look at Mars as capability. Make sure you can see that. Yep. So Mars as our psychological capacity. This is our survival instinct and our assertion, the aggression, and our initiative in life. Okay. As a process, Mars is when we act, when we do anything. It's to endeavor. It's to assert, to initiate, and to vitalize. When we look at Mars as a state of being, this is our aliveness, our vitality, our energy, decisiveness. When we feel all-powerful or impulsive, when we feel reckless or impatient, selfish, when we're irritable, angry, or when we have aggression. This is all Mars. And I know that these are some easy words and easy ways that we can definitely relate to how we feel sometimes. Okay, so that's another thing I just want to kind of start asking people to do, is see if you can start looking at your emotions in terms of, what planet is that? All right, let's move on. Let's move on and take a look at our houses. So we're going to go through the houses pretty quick, because when we go through signs, it does talk a lot about, and even when we went through planets just then, it did talk a lot about the houses. So the 12 houses of the zodiac, we can start here with Aries. Now again, in the circle, your circle it might or it might not start with Aries, okay? It's going to be different for everybody, but some people will have Aries in the first house. No matter what, when you look at the houses, just the blank slate, the first house might be in Gemini. It still is going to represent you. It's going to represent I am. It's going to talk about yourself, the identity, your body, your vitality, first impressions, your attitudes and beginnings. The second house, I have. We're looking at self-worth, money, personal assets, wealth, and resources. In the third house here, it's I think. This is thinking, early education, siblings, and communication. Moving across that IC, remember, moving across that IC into the fourth house here, this is I feel. And this is our home, our roots, our family, our mother, our foundation, and our emotions. Looking here to the fifth house of romance, creativity, children, play, and self-expression, this is the house of I create. Going to the sixth house, this is I serve, talks about work, daily habits, routines, health systems, our pets. In the seventh house, after we cross this line that represents the DC or the descendant, it talks about I partner, okay? These are our marriages, our partnerships, our contracts, and our relationships. Moving into my favorite house, the eighth house, and this is I transform, all right? This is all about deaths, intimacy, sex, transformation, also other people's money, shared assets, merging. Take a look up here at the ninth house. This is I explore. The ninth house represents travel, wisdom, higher education, values, spirituality, and religion. Going into the 10th house, crossing that the IC line, we're looking at I achieve, career, public, image, long-term goals, legacy, the father. Moving here into the 11th house, I aspire, humanity, communities, technology, hopes, and originality. Finally, looking at the 12th house, this is I dream, endings, healings, subconscious, closure, and spirituality. Let's take another look at the houses. It's always opposite, and that's what I'd like to point out here, is that we're looking at the opposites of houses. If the first house is your self-identity, the seventh house is your partnership identity. If the second is your money, the eighth house is the money of others. If the second house is possessions and what you have in like right here, the eighth house is what you have available to you spiritually, like to transform. The third house is your immediate surroundings, like in local transportation, early education. Then the ninth house is international, long distance travel, and higher education. If the fourth house is nurturing and early life, the 10th house is the discipline and the end of life. Okay, the fifth house, hobbies, individual talent, and what you want for yourself. The 11th house is humanitarianism, groups, friends, and what you want for humanity. Finally, the sixth house, physical health, material, analysis, strict, leaving the 12th house with mental health, spiritual connection, and free-flowing. Okay? Let's move on down. And this is just kind of giving you an idea. If you want to understand more, about your first house, look to your first house and look to the planets that are there. Look to the signs that are in, what sign is in your first house? Do you have any planets in your first house? The ascendant is in your first house. And we'll talk about that chart ruler at the end of today's class. But to understand more about, so look to your first house if you want to understand more about your identity, your appearance, and your image. Look to your second house if you want to understand more about your values, money, and possessions. Look to your third house if you want to understand more about how you communicate, your siblings, and your way of thinking. Look to your fourth house if you want to understand more about the home you came from, your roots, security, and comfort. Look to your fifth house if you want to understand more about how you express yourself, romance, and children. Look to your sixth house if you want to understand more about your daily routine, service to others, and your health. Look to your 7th house if you want to understand more about partnerships in your life, your marriage, and who you attract. Look to your 8th house if you want to understand more about intimacy, death, and shared resources. Look to your 9th house if you want to understand more about your belief system, your travels, and your philosophy. Look to your 10th house if you want to understand more about your public image, your legacy, and your achievements. Look to your 11th house if you want to understand more about your role in the collective, goals, and friendships. And finally, look to your 12th house if you want to understand more about your unconscious mind, your reflection, your solitude, and your alone time. I'm so sorry, guys. My neighbor's dog is just barking this whole video. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to hear it, but I can definitely hear her. So I apologize. I highly recommend this tea. Okay, so it's chamomile flowers from my friend Ashton, but also it's a rose black tea. So I boiled the black tea and the rose with the chamomile, and oh my goodness, I think it's a new favorite. It's so good. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. All right, so we're about to jump into signs. When we jump into signs, we start to use some words like cardinal, fixed, mutable, okay? We're going to use our elements, fire, earth, air, and water. We're going to use words like yin and yang. So this is just kind of letting you know how these things came to be. You can start with yin and yang. Okay, the definition from Wikipedia describes opposite but interconnected forces. In the Chinese cosmology, the universe created itself out of a primary chaos of material energy, organized into the cycles of yin and yang. And I'm going to pause there and explain to you, these are rotating forces, right? So you've got chaos. And out of chaos, you have one force that was outward radiating. And out of chaos, you had one force that was inward radiating, inward, pulling in, almost magnetizing. One drew in and one drew out. Does that make sense? Okay? And that's what these forces are. They're the forces of outward expression and inward reflection. Okay? And that's what yin and yang are. And out of that yin and yang divided, it's every other. Aries, Cancer, it goes just like this. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo. Every other. It's yang then yin, yang then yin. It starts with yang. All right. Over here, what I want you to understand is that when we take the 4 elements, fire, earth, air, and water, and we multiply them by our 3 qualities of cardinal, fixed, and mutable, that is how you got these 12 signs. That is how we got the 12 signs of astrology, is by multiplying the 4 elements by the 3 qualities. Okay? There's a lot of information inside of your book about the qualities and the elements. I definitely don't have time to go over every single thing, but I can. If you want me to do more, reach out, okay? Reach out and let me know. But we can definitely go over elements and qualities in another class. But I want to move on to discussing the signs. All right, so let's move on and let's look at our signs. Alrighty, let's move on to Aries and the signs. Let's talk about what they represent. We're going to look at Aries as psychological needs, okay? So we all have basic psychological needs, and they're the need for survival, okay? The need for freedom and independence, adventure, your need for immediate gratification. These are Aries needs, okay? Archetypes of Aries, these are your warrior, the pioneer, the adventurer, and the explorer. When we look at the behavioral traits of Aries, we get assertive, egocentric, primitive, innocent, independent, direct, energetic, decisive, initiating, impulsive, fearless, and impatient. Okay, this is instinctual expression, spontaneous action, the initial impulse and the first step forward. It's a need for basic trust of self and others, how you initiate and how you assert. Aries is the beginning of an astrological new year. So like I know we're normally celebrating the new year on the last day of December, welcoming in the new year. But astrologically, the new year begins in Aries. So this is our first house. It has the nature of Mars. This is a fire element, and this is a cardinal yang energy. All right, let's move on and look at Taurus. Taurus archetypes are going to represent the Earth Mother, fertility goddess, sensualist, a glutton, a settler. The behavioral traits of Taurus, we're looking at sensuous, attractive, materialistic, concrete, calm, stable, steadfast, plodding, patient, enduring, conservative, possessive, retentive, attached, resistant to change, and also stubborn. If we look at psychological needs of Taurus, this is our need for safety and security, as well as stability. It's also sensual gratification and pleasure. This is what one acquires, the way one acquires it, the way you acquire your physical security and your possessions. It's what gives you pleasure and comfort. It's your approach to money, physical and spiritual resources and possessions. It's your attitude toward your physical body and bodily needs. So Taurus is of the nature of Venus. It is the second house, and it is a fixed yin energy and also earth element. We definitely need to do a whole another video on just elements elements and qualities, because it is extremely important to understand our overall element. Okay, it's very important to understand our overall element, and not just our overall element in our chart, but if we're lacking an element. If we're lacking an element, or if we have two dominant elements, this can be, it can very easily, very straight to the point out how you need balance in your life by using the elements that you don't have and bringing the elements that you don't have in to your own life. Let's move on and take a look at the Gemini keywords. So Gemini is, again, the third house. It's a mutable yang energy. It is of the nature of Mercury. Okay, when we look at the archetypes of Gemini, this is your messenger, herald, your reporter, your student, or your amateur. The behavioral traits of Gemini: curious, communicative, bright, precocious, restless, witty, hyperactive, knowledgeable about factual matters, versatile, superficial, chatty, physical, light, flighty, and scattered. We also have adaptable, alert, busy, changeable, clever, connections. We also have talkative, two-faced, unemotional, unreliable, unsympathetic, verbal, and versatile. This is a day-to-day thinking, the way that your mind works on a day-to-day basis, focusing on acquiring information, short distance, travel, siblings, Gemini representing the twins, also neighbors. Let's see, did I read everything on? Oh, our psychological needs. So the needs, the basic need that Gemini is representing in your life, this is your informational gathering, okay? The need to have factual knowledge and learning, the need for mental stimulation and communication, okay? Communication is also about connection with others. So let's move on and take a look at Cancer. Cancer is a cardinal yin energy. It is a water element. It is representing the fourth house. It is of the nature of the moon. The psychological needs that Cancer is representing are that need to nurture, to care, tenderness, unconditional love, belonging, sympathetic understanding, closeness, and emotional support. The archetypes of Cancer include the mother, the caretaker, dependence, wombs, and other sacred containers. Behavioral traits that we're looking at are, again, the traits of nurturing, caring, protectiveness, the ability to be tender or soft, or not to be tender and soft, right? Sensitive, gentle, receptive, mirroring, reactive, impressionable, indirect, shy, timid, introverted, sentimental, vulnerable, and dependent. This is also your personal past, nesting experiences, a sense of belonging. Okay, these can be our early childhood experiences of nurturing. All right, guys, let's move on to Leo. When we look at Leo, again, we're talking about the sun. We're talking about the 5th house. Leo is a fixed yang energy. It is a fire element, all right? And when we look at the basic needs that Leo is representing in our life, this is trying to be validated. The validation of identity, self-esteem. This is the need for approval and attention, the need to be self-expressive and to enjoy yourself and enjoy others. All right, archetypes of Leo, obviously actors and actresses, heroes, playmates, romantic partners. There's romantic on there. I think that's the wrong word. Let's mark that one off. Let's mark that one off. All right. This is all forms of play, though. Leo is representing all forms of play, your playmates, bosom buddies, including your own children. All right, these are your experiences, whether they're validated or invalidated. That's what Leo can represent. All right, if we talk about behavioral traits that Leo represents, this is pride and being proud, confident, playful, affable, magnanimous, creative, expressive, dramatic, positive, overbearing, showy, boastful, naive, egocentric, defensive, or prideful. Let's take a look at Virgo now. So Virgo is that 6th house of health and hygiene. It is the earth element. It is a mutable yin energy and of the nature of Mercury. So when we look at the archetypes of Virgo, you have your efficiency expert, your troubleshooter, your Mr. Fix-It, apprentices, novices, doubting Thomas, an analyst, a critic, a worrywart, and also a spinster. So we look at a psychological needs. What are the needs that Virgo is representing in all of us? This is our need for competency, for service, our need for efficiency, and also our need to make improvements on ourselves and in our environment. So it can represent our mundane day-to-day responsibilities, our work, our co-workers. It can represent being of service. When we look at the behavioral traits that Virgo brings to the table, this is efficiency, competency, being pragmatic, being conscientious, the ability to be helpful or not, right? Technical, precise, systematic, orderly, humble, modest, skeptical, restrained, analytical, discriminating, critical, picky, fastidious, and meticulous. So again, I'm just hoping that these lists of words that all, again, you've got words after words after words. These words are going to be used to help you read your own chart. When something is in Virgo, you can come back to Virgo and look at these words and decide which ones talk about you, which ones describe you. and put those into the sentences for your sun or your moon or whatever is in Virgo, okay? All right, that's why I want you to have all these words. So when you read your own birth chart, you can make sentences that make sense to you. Let's look at Libra. Libra is of the nature of Venus. It is a cardinal yang energy. It is an air element, and it represents the 7th house. The psychological need that Libra is expressing. This is our need for harmony and beauty, the need for intimacy, companionship, relatedness, and the need for fairness. We look at the archetypes that Libra can represent. You have the goddess of love, your beloved, a peacemaker, a mediator, a diplomat, a public relations person, networker, social butterfly, artist, and judge. But look at the behavioral traits that Libra brings to the table. These are the traits of engaging, charming, nice, sociable, polite, tactful, graceful, aesthetic, appealing, kind, fair, just, impartial, considerate, cooperative, placating, superficial, compliant, and indecisive. So, I love Libra. My Pluto is in Libra. Well, it's in Libra in my Western chart. If you use sidereal, it pops over to Virgo. But let's move on to Scorpio. And we are filming this only a few hours before the Scorpio eclipse, the Scorpio solar eclipse. The sun has just moved into Scorpio, and we are all under this powerful energy swimming in the ethers together. So let's talk about Scorpio and what this eclipse might be focused on. So it is of the nature of Mars and Pluto. It is our 8th house. It is a water element, and it is our fixed yin energy. The archetypes of Scorpio that may be asking to work with you during this eclipse are the wounded healer, the shaman, a shadow figure. There's monsters and villains, but I'll give you a clue. It's all just ourself on the inside. The underworld, figures, erotic types, tyrants, and the stranger. The behavioral traits of Scorpio, this are things that are erotic, provocative, penetrating, suspicious, guarded, intense, deep, passionate, powerful, controlling, dangerous, covert, tactical, manipulative, vindictive, extreme, exposing, and regenerative. But the basic psychological needs that Scorpio is representing are those needs to transform, the need to heal and reform, catharsis, elimination, sex, power through union with the unknown, and integrity. It's absolutely deep and beautiful waters to wade through. So I hope you guys are enjoying swimming in this eclipse energy. Let's move on and talk about Sagittarius. Sagittarius is our mutable yang energy of the 9th house and the nature of Jupiter. Sagittarius is a fire element. The behavioral traits associated with Sagittarius: jovial, enthusiastic, optimistic, opinionated, truthful, frank, moralistic, righteous, persuasive, expansive, benevolent, philanthropic, excessive, grandiose, manic. The needs that Sagittarius is bringing up for everyone is the need for truth, the need for meaning and purpose, a need for justice, for virtue and morality, for expansion, hope, faith, and the belief in a higher power. This is how you approach your faith and your learning. The archetypes of Sagittarius are your teacher and guru, your moralist, your promoter. Sagittarius can show you what is sacred to you. All right, guys, let's move on to Capricorn. Something I love to say about Capricorn is when I switched over my chart from Western to Vedic or sidereal, my ascendant moved into Capricorn. And while Aquarius is my original ascendant, ruled by Uranus and Saturn, Capricorn is not ruled by Uranus and Saturn. It is only ruled by Saturn. And so I started to give a closer look at my chart ruler, which would have switched from Uranus to Saturn, basically. And I was so shocked. All these things that I would have never thought that I was, I am very much so. I'm very much so controlling. I'm very, very much so in a leadership position and have dominant goals and extreme attitudes toward authority and limits and things like that. So that is why I want you to promise me that though you're just now trying to learn and you're trying to figure out how to just read this basic chart, in front of you, that you're going to go into the settings and you're going to change it and you're going to take a peek at that Vedic or at that sidereal system and see if you get a new placement that triggers you at all, because that is where the magic is. It's when I discovered this that I went, oh my gosh, I am way more serious than I thought I was, and that's how everyone else sees you, because Capricorn is your 10th house. Okay, it's what everyone else is seeing. So anyway, let's talk about what Capricorn means. This is the nature of Saturn. This is our 10th house. All right, earth element and a cardinal yin energy. This is your attitude towards authority and limits. All right, when we look at the archetypes of Saturn, you're talking about Kronos, the father of time, authority figures, control freaks, and of course, Mr. Scrooge. All right, when we look at the psychological needs that Capricorn represents, it's our need for perfection and success. It's the need for structure, order, and control. The behavioral traits that we talk about when we talk about Capricorn are traits of seriousness, being reserved, formal, ambitious. It's perseverance, perfectionist, exacting, focus, fastidious, orderly, organized, disciplined, practical, realistic, traditional, conservative, prudent, callous, and grim. So that's what Saturn brings to the table. All right, that's what Capricorn brings to the table, I should say. Let's move on to our last two signs, and that is going to be Aquarius and Pisces. Aquarius, all right, this is our 11th house. This is a fixed yang energy of the nature of Saturn and Saturn and Uranus. Uranus is our modern ruler, while Saturn is our ancient ruler before we discovered Uranus. Aquarius is an air element, and I believe I already said a fixed yang energy. The behavioral traits associated with Aquarius are being detached, objective, cool, whimsical, broad-minded, non-judgmental, impersonal, eccentric, original, innovative, progressive, humanitarian, altruistic, rebellious, outspoken, lightning, and shocking. The archetypes of Aquarius include the trickster, objective witness, Prometheus, the revolutionary, the radical, the humanitarian, the utopian visionary, a mad scientist, and an eccentric. The psychological need that Aquarius represents in all of us is the need for awakening and revelation, a need for perspective, and a need for liberation, change, and progress towards the future. All right, let's take a look at our last sign, the sign that represents the 12th house, and that is Pisces, a mutable yin energy. The archetypes of Pisces include the mystic, the rescuer, a martyr, a victim, a poet, a dreamer, and a fraud. Behavioral traits and Pisces that go together are passive, submissive, delicate, dreamy, yielding, compassionate, empathetic, forgiving, sensitive, vague, confused, facilitating, imaginative, idealistic, escapist, spiritual, and intuitive. This is of the nature of Jupiter and Neptune. I don't know if I said that a moment ago. So Jupiter is our ancient ruler before we discovered Neptune. Pisces is your ability to transcend, okay? It's your ability to sacrifice, to rescue, to dream, to escape, deny, sabotage, or deceive. It's solitude or incarceration, whichever way you want to see it. The psychological need that Pisces represents is the need for transcendence and the need for unity, infinite love and beauty, and oneness with nature. So that wraps up all of our 12 signs. And now that you have a little bit of an understanding on what these, so in class 1, you can now dissect your circle. You know what the pieces of your circle are and you know what goes where. Now you have an understanding of the planets, your luminaries, what each house means, and what each sign means. So with that information, the first step I think you should just go ahead and check out is see, what is your chart ruler? Okay, so your homework for this class will be to find out what your chart ruler is. I want you to look to your first house. The chart ruler is the same as the planetary ruler of the first house and the ascendant, okay? So the chart ruler is the planet that is most representative of the individual, and it gives critical information to help understand one's life path, your major life themes and experiences, talents and characters, as well as your physical appearance and health. So where is it at? This is in your first house, okay? So you're going to find your ascendant. You're going to find out who rules it. And how are you going to do that? If your ascendant is in Gemini, then you would go to Gemini and you would say, who rules Gemini? Mercury. Mercury rules Gemini. So my chart ruler is Mercury, okay? Now, if you are of like me and you have Capricorn, let's say you have Capricorn as your chart ruler, you might be of the Saturn nature, or, you know, no, that's not what I meant to say. I meant to, my first chart ruler, my Western chart ruler is Aquarius. So you kind of get to see who are you more like. Are you more of a Uranian or are you more of a Saturn person? Okay, and that's what's important here, is trying to figure out your overall energy. Once you have figured out your chart ruler, I want you to ask some questions. And here are the questions down here that I want you to ask. I want you to ask, how has your life been presenting you with the themes associated with that planet? Okay? Your ascendant is who you are becoming in this life. So after you have figured the answer to that out, I want you to find what house is your chart ruler in. So what that means is you have your circle, okay? You have your circle, and your first house is let's say we just figured out that your Gemini is in first house, so Mercury is your chart ruler. But Mercury isn't there. That's not where Mercury is. Mercury is in the 8th house, okay? So when you see that now that your Mercury is in the 8th house, you can see that the themes that your ascendant is talking to you through will be colored by the 8th house, okay? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense for you. All right, so life has been presenting you with the themes of that house, so it's good to see what is going on. So now I want you guys to look to the keywords in this presentation. Okay, does your chart ruler show you your day-to-day activity, job, patterns? Check your other chart, your sidereal chart as well, to see what your highest expression is, all right? This may be an energy that you think you do not embody. So I just want you to be open to what that means. But starting here with your chart ruler, who rules your chart? And then if that planet is not in that first house, where is he? What house is he in? What theme does that planet speak to you through? I think that's a great place to start with trying to read your chart. I hope you've enjoyed class 2, and I will see you guys again soon for class number 3. Thank you.